Wait until you're called or your case is called, and we'll turn this over to Lisa Minton to get our meeting started.
Good afternoon. The Metropolitan Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session for the regularly scheduled meeting of July 15th, 2021. My name is Lisa Minton, and I will be presenting the cases to the board for their review in today's public hearing. We are convened here at the Sonny West Conference Center in the Howard Office Building located at 700 2nd Avenue South. For these public hearings, the board reviews the correspondence submitted in support of and opposition to these cases. The board also reviews correspondence and recommendations from other government agencies in preparation for the hearings. In today's hearings, staff will present the site plans, maps, photographs, and other documents that comprise the case record. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the appellant will present his or her case to the board. After the appellant's presentation, if anyone is here wishing to speak in support of the appeal, they may do so. If any opposition is present, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition presents its testimony, the appellant will have a period for rebuttal. According to the BZA rules, the appellant has 5 minutes for presentation if no opposition is present. In contested cases, the BZA rules allow 10 minutes for each side to present their testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some portion of that allotted 10 minutes. At the conclusion of each hearing, the board will deliberate and then vote on that case. The board is vested with power to act on these cases under the provisions of Metro Zoning Code Section 1740-180. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Metro Zoning Code, which applies to the entire jurisdiction of the metropolitan government. The zoning code was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective on January 1st, 1998. I will introduce the entire zoning code and make it part of today's record. The Metro Code requires a record of these proceedings, and because the BZA meetings are recorded for the Metro Nashville network, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board come forward to the podium, turn on the microphone, and identify yourselves by name and address, and then make your desired presentations. The Metro Code requires 4 members of our 7-member board to establish quorum. The code also requires that at least 4 affirmative votes to grant an appeal. In the event that 5 or more members are present, but the appeal fails to receive 4 affirmative votes, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next 30 days. Applications that fail to receive 4 affirmative votes within 30 days of the public hearing shall be deemed denied by operation of law. Pursuant to board rules, an aggrieved party may appeal board decisions to Chancery or Circuit Court within 60 days of the entry of a BZA order. Additionally, as per the BZA rules, an aggrieved party may file a motion for rehearing by the BZA within 60 days of the original hearing date. After that time elapses, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If your appeal is granted, you are required to obtain the permit for which you applied. A permit must be obtained within 2 years for a board's approval to remain valid. It should also be noted that if false or misleading testimony is presented to the board, any board approval could be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing before the BZA. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order. All appellants have been notified by certified mail, and all legal notice requirements have been fulfilled.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the cases to be heard, we'd like to take the opportunity to recognize any elected officials who are in attendance today. I do believe we have a few council members present. Would you like to speak at this time? Okay, and are there anyone else present? I believe they've left. We do have some preliminary announcements regarding deferrals and withdrawals. Case 2021-086, located at 3941 Nolensville Pike, has been administratively deferred until the August 5th meeting. It's a signed variance request. And case 2021-102 was withdrawn because it is permitted by right and does not require an appeal. The BZA utilizes a consent agenda for its meetings. One board member reviews the record for each case prior to the hearing and identifies those cases which meet the criteria for the requested action by the appellant. If the reviewing board member determines that testimony in the case would not alter the material facts in any substantial way, the case is recommended to the board for approval. The following items are proposed for today's consent agenda. If there's any opposition present for any of these cases, it'll be removed from the consent agenda and heard on today's docket. First case on the consent agenda today is case 2021-100, located at 2102 Blair Boulevard, requesting a special exception from the front setback requirements to construct a covered deck addition to the existing restaurant. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-100? Seeing none. Next case, case 2021-103, located at 5332 Old Village Road, seeking a variance from a rear setback requirement to construct a roof over an existing second-story deck. Is there anyone here in opposition to this case, to case 2021-103? Seeing none. Mr. Chairman, those are the two cases on today's consent agenda.
Great. There's two cases on the consent agenda. I think that the case 100 on Blair did have the condition that it not be enclosed. If they wanted to enclose that, then they would have to come back. But it is for the proposal as submitted and nothing more. Those two cases are on consent. Is there
Make a motion to
there's a motion. Is there a second? Have a second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed? That motion passes.
Ready to proceed with today's cases to be heard?
And I did see Councilman Cash. Councilman Cash was here. Did you have anything to say? You were on consent, but I didn't know.
Myself and my neighbors are in support of Brown's Diner.
All right, well, good. All right, thank you.
Council. Okay.
All right, we'll proceed.
First case to be considered today is case 2021-069, located at 2061 Shaw Road, seeking a special exception with an AR2A district. They're seeking to open a campground. Here's an overview of the parcel showing the zoning in the area. Here's an overlay of the topography of the area. Here's the original site plan that was provided the first time this case was before the board back on May 18th. And here's an overview of the revised site plan that was submitted for today's docket. I do believe there are people here in opposition and possibly support of this case, so the appellant may first come forward, introduce yourselves, and state your case at this point.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Fulmer, and with me is Ms. Erin Wolf, the operator of the campground. Since the last meeting, Erin's had an additional neighborhood meeting, and we've made several modifications, a few to the site plan, but generally in the operational component of it. She's agreed to incorporate an area for 24-hour management to be on site. We know that was one of the big concerns for safety, for many reasons. She's identified somebody who's interested in filling that position, so it's nice to know that it's not just somewhat of an empty approach. It's something that has merit. The parking lot was shifted further away from the road, partially to save a lot of the existing vegetation and help screen it from the road. There will be signs posted every 150 feet along the perimeter of the property line. There was a lot of concern about people potentially wandering off the property. Since we've submitted this site plan, that is noted on the site plan. Since we submitted it, some of the neighbors also expressed concern of, what happens during hunting season. Property lines aren't visible, and so, we're also inclined to have a surveyor just tie ribbon along the property line frequently, because obviously we don't want that to, we don't want a neighbor trespassing back on this property, especially with ammunition. There will be a landline telephone installed in the pavilion. That way, in case cell phones aren't working, whether it be the cell phone of the on-site management or any of the guests. And the restroom facility within the pavilion, they were going to reinforce it above and beyond what code requires, primarily just for shelter in the small event that a tornado comes or that there's inclement weather that they need to get out of that the pavilion can't provide them shelter from. The biggest change to the plan is a reduction in sites from 40 to 30. So that was a 25% reduction. There was also a reduction in the square footage of the pavilion. A couple of the other notes that we'd like to make are in the special exception requirements listed in the zoning code we feel have been met. We had a traffic and parking memo prepared by Amy Birch, a transportation engineer. It was not in by the deadline to include them in your packet, but I've given Joey 7 copies of them to distribute. And wanted to remind everybody that the planning department had previously recommended approval of this application. I want to turn it over to Aaron to make a few more points.
Yeah, I just wanted to further address concerns from the community that I've heard in the 2 meetings that I've held with them and the 2 meetings that I've held with Ms. Gamble. Noise and disturbance is a primary concern, and so I just wanted to reiterate that there will be no PA systems, no speaker or loud system on the property. I wanted to remind the board that we are operating within the 150-foot setback, so there's quite a bit of space between our operation and our boundary line. I've included a letter in the packet that Jay passed out to you guys from my former business counterpart at my current location on Bloomsbury Farm, who's attesting to the fact that my operation has been well managed and there have been no issues and disturbances on their property. We will have quiet hours enforced, and the addition of the on-site live-in grounds manager makes that feasible to enforce after my normal staff leaves between 7 or 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. So throughout the night, I will have a employee present to enforce those rules. And yeah, and also just a reminder that our campsites are closer together than the nearest residence. And so it's in my business interest to maintain order on my grounds so that my customers are happy. I also just want to review who my typical customers are now currently. Like I said at the previous meeting, everybody is coming to my business to disconnect and to retreat into nature and to enjoy a peaceful environment. And these people are spending over $200 a night on their reservation, and so it's a little bit of a higher end customer. And I've had no issues with damages to my property, disturbance to my property owners, or anything like that. My clientele has been respectful and excited to enjoy the experience that I've provided. Security was another concern from the community, and Jay addressed some of the things in the site plan that address that. The no trespassing signs placed every 150 feet, the addition of purple markers even more frequently along the boundary lines to address hunting concerns. Also, education on my customers will be important on just when hunting season is so that they're aware. There are also trails in the back of the property that cross over to our property from other properties. And in those areas, I think it is important to have actual fencing and not just signage to just make it really clear that this trail you are not allowed to go past this boundary on this trail. And then one of the last things that's come up a couple times is just abandonment if my business does not succeed and what happens to the property afterwards. Obviously, I'm not planning for that to happen, but I just wanted to reinforce that almost all of the structures are movable. The tents and the campers are movable, resellable, and the primary structure, which is the pavilion and bathhouse area, is a salvageable value. So that is a bit of a review of what I've discussed with the community.
Any questions at this point?
The One thing that caught my attention a little bit more this time probably than the last time is the issue of safety with hunting around there. And frankly, I don't know how much hunting is over in that part of the county. Can you help me out a little bit? Because you both were here when we had neighbors going, we had one neighbor sort of allude to being upset if some of your customers went onto their property, which, talk to me about that. I mean, I know that you've considered it, and I know you've got the no trespassing signs, and I know you're going to have the markers and what have you, and you're going to have staff there. That helps a ton. But I just want to make sure you've thought it all through and want to hear it articulated by you guys. And then the other part I'm going to ask is, talk to me a little bit, if you would, please, about what rules you have on sound and what have you, because that was another concern that we heard last time you guys came through. So I'll leave it to y'all.
I'll let Aaron talk about the rules and regulations and the sound. I'm an avid hunter, and everywhere I hunt is completely unmarked. And you have to know where you can go and where you can't. So it's two-sided. One, we're trying to go above and beyond to make it very clear to people that are on this property that don't know the property as well where they can't go. And happy to pull that away from the property line, to the 150 feet or further away, just to help with noise dampening. But the concern is not everybody is as in tune with it. And so our bigger concern is others harming people on this property inadvertently. But that's one of the responsibilities that they instill in you when you go through the hunter safety program as a child. And unfortunately, accidents happen, but we just want to do everything we can to help prevent that. So, we can always play devil's advocate and worst case scenario, but we feel like marking it a couple times infrequently is great. And there's really nothing that you can ever do to keep noise from traveling over a property line. Our goal is to maintain noise at an appropriate level, as in if two people are walking on a trail and having a conversation. You can never help if your neighbor's bush hogging, that's loud, or there's farming operations going on. So I'm sensitive to that, but at the same time, doesn't matter what's here, that could occur. The current owner could have his children running around on the property. That doesn't change that if a neighbor's hunting. But I'll let Erin talk about the rules that she'll have in place.
Before you start on that, Aaron, if I could.
Yeah.
Just let me ask this. Your marketing for the use of this property is not just in this very tight-knit little region where people will know things. You're gonna have a wide-based, I would assume, draw to bring people in.
You mean,
Well, say in New England, where people don't know much about hunting. We may know about it here in the South, although. Actually, I was enjoying the sound.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
Like a soundtrack to your voice.
Yeah. Oh, that was kind of good. Yeah. Anyway, but
yeah, I would say about 85 to 90% of my customers are within a 2.5-hour radius driving distance. So most people are from
this part of the world.
Yeah, this part of the world.
Okay.
But
that doesn't mean anything.
Well, I understand that. Believe me, I've seen more California cars driving around here lately than
that's
anything
true.
else.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I
Yeah.
like their money.
yeah, I mean, I think he strikes the comments.
That's your education.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think education is a part of it, and we'll definitely have, a standard campground waiver. And I think that the moment that person signs that, walking through all of the things that happen in the area and talking about boundary lines, et cetera, the noise rules, all of that stuff would happen at that moment when the customer.
Warn the folks when they come in.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the right time to just talk about all those things is the campground waiver moment, where it's like, here are all the things you're acknowledging by coming on this property.
And just so there's no misunderstanding here, it's a two-way street. I mean, if you're good neighbors, you want your neighbors to be good people.
For sure.
You want your neighbors to be good people too, and you want them to respect your rights to use your property. Okay.
In the same lane as Mr. Lawless's question, last time it was brought up, concerns about alcohol, drinking, and partying. Are you all not going to serve any alcohol on site? How is that going to work?
Right now, I provide a 1 drink per 21-year-old or above customer per 21-year-old or above customer cocktail from a local distillery. That's included in their reservation. But other than that, there's no consistent serving of alcohol. But it's not banned that people could bring it.
So alcohol is not banned. And for my education, does that require a liquor license?
No, because I'm not charging for it.
And that goes back to her comment that these are close enough where they need to be respectful of each other, or else somebody that just paid a pretty high rate to stay here will then be upset. And so that's why it's pretty regulated, and that'll help with the on-site management. And so she's got ways to reinforce that, whether it be through penalty or no return, or there's ways that she's highly motivated to not let anybody get out of hand.
So, Mr. Fulmer, I think Mr. Hargis must still have the traffic study, but I assume that came out, okay, I'm sorry to get it. I assume that came out suitable.
It did, and she looked at, so this at most, conservatively, could add 10 peak trips, or 10 trips in a peak hour. The threshold for most traffic studies is anywhere from 50 to 100. And so it was not worthy of significant or any off-site improvements, just because it's not, typically the trips that this would add are not even in peak hours. She also looked at the access. She noted that there's a lot of vegetation up near the road, and so we need to clear some of that, just the underbrush and the overhang, just to give visibility, to make it a safer movement out of there. And there's nothing in our code that tells you how to park this. And so she researched other cities and what their codes say and made a recommendation, and we've exceeded it.
Okay. And do you recall, remind me, I think the way this, if it weren't used for the use that's before us, it could be I think, turned into 5 or 6 different lots. Is that correct?
As a subdivision?
Lots. I'm trying to compare what would be, it can be developed residentially, correct?
It's the zoning is AR2A, which means you have to have at least a 2-acre minimum, and we would have to go through a subdivision to figure out what planning would support, because you would need a public road to access the rear lots. So just doing the old acreage divided by minimum acreage is not really true on what it would yield. But you could get several lots from it, and this is a property significantly larger than most of the other lots. And one of the adjacent larger lots to the south is the letter of support you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Julie Wall, who was able to come the last meeting but not able to come this meeting, continues to support, and she also wrote a letter that is in your packet.
And is that the lot that's kind of at the bottom of this plan here? It's kind of the largest. Yeah.
Yes, if we can look at that. So you see the large one to the south?
Right, yes.
That is her lot.
Okay, thank you.
And so I'm also assuming that most of the people that come to your place aren't like a family with, 5 or 6 members and teenagers that are going out all the time on the weekend. I'm assuming these folks are probably coming in for this experience, and if they drive in and they don't Uber or something, they're going to park. And I mean, they don't generally need to go to the grocery store and all that other kind of stuff, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's the behavior
Tell me about that.
currently. My customers, I would say 90% of them come park, stay, and don't leave, and they bring what they need with them. I do have a handful that want the experience but also want to come into Nashville, and those people do drive to and from my location, but the majority are coming for the experience and to be kind of off the grid and chilled out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? All right, did you all have anything else to add at this time?
I guess the only other item that we looked at is there is a calculation for max density for a campground as a special exception. For this acreage, it produces a maximum about 250. Her campgrounds are ideal for 2 adults, so it's significantly less. She has a few of them that could also do 2 adults and maybe 2 children for a family, but that gross number of people is 30% of the allowable calculation in the code.
Okay. And so I take it that, each of these proposed changes that you all have put out there today, I take it that you would have no objection to any of those being a condition of approval since you've already agreed to do that? Okay. All right. If you all have nothing else to add, then you will have almost 4 minutes for rebuttal. I'll remind the folks in the audience that are opposed to this that you have 10 minutes total. That doesn't count any questions that we may ask of you, so plan your time accordingly. And so whoever would like to come and speak is certainly welcome to come up to the podium now and speak if you're in opposition. Yes, sir. And remember just to please press the button when you speak and state your name and address and then tell us what you have to say. But make sure the red light's on your microphone before you speak.
My name is Tim Coates. I live at 2064 Shaw Road. I want to thank you folks for letting me speak today. First of all, I've looked over the code. In fact, when I start talking, I'm going to revert back to the code. Everything that I'm going to present, it reverts back to the code. And when you look at the special exception, it does not say campground. It says camp. So in my mind, when I think of a camp, I think of Easter Seal Camp or Boxwell Camp or something like that. So when I look at what they're doing, it is not a camp. It is an Airbnb in a tent. It is not a camp. It's short-term rental, which is what they do. She and Mr. Thomas, who owns the property, already have a little motel in East Nashville doing short-term rental. That's what they do. So this is nothing more than an extension of that. And I'm afraid that once they get their foot in, they're going to be able to add, whatever they want to add. They didn't mention septic system. Now, on our call the other day with Aaron and Councilwoman Gamble, Aaron talked about this company called Arenco that does this waste management system. I don't think they have room to do the septic system, the conventional septic system. I could be wrong, but when I look at that, it's like, where are you going to put the leach field? So the Arenco system is a much smaller footprint. It's very expensive, $50,000 to $75,000. I talked to a sales rep about this. It also has to have an irrigation field, which is similar to a leach field. Now, they have these systems that will handle up to thousands of people. They use them at military bases. They use them at hospitals. They use them for certain neighborhoods. They put the system like that in, it's going to be a lot easier for them to put more and more things in. You see what I'm saying? It's like it's sort of a stepping stone, if you will, to more development, because they will already have the septic system, which in an area like that, that's the big deal. It's like finding a septic system. So I'll start by talking about the adverse effects of the property under 17.16.150. We don't know what's going to happen to property values. I would venture to say they're not going to go up because of this. More than likely, they may drop because people like myself and the majority of the people in the room, they're not interested in that. So people that want to come into that area, they're not interested in moving into a place that has commercial businesses. So letting one in is a foot in the door to allow other like businesses into the area, which is not what we want. So under 1716-150, you got integrity of adjacent areas. Approval of the permit will not adversely affect other property in the area to the extent that it will impair the reasonable long-term use of those properties. So to me, that is can be talking about property values. Are the property values going to diminish because of this? That's C. Now, D in that is design and architectural capability. It says site design architectural features which contribute to compatibility include but are not limited to landscape, drainage, access, circulation, building style, height, blah, blah, blah. So, in other words, it's supposed to be kind of like other stuff that's around there. So this is brand new. There's nothing like this anywhere in the neighborhood. So I think that kind of falls under D. Traffic impact, they spoke to that. So what they said, they did have a traffic study done. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Oh, it didn't require it. Okay, thank you.
Before you move through these, so I don't lose my train of thought, so you said I want to make sure I understand what conditions you say have not been met, and one you're allowing is integrity of adjacent areas, and your position is it will cause, this use will cause property values of neighboring properties to be reduced. How is that, so that I can very specifically understand that?
Well, because it's a rural area, and we don't have any, there are no businesses around there, and people don't want businesses. They don't want the extra traffic. Now, this says that there's going to be minimal traffic. I don't know when they did the traffic study, but peak hours, there's a lot of traffic on that road. There's a sinkhole right where I guess they're talking about putting the driveway, the new driveway, and there's a big sinkhole right there. So something's going to have to be done to address that. So I'm not going to get into the traffic thing because that's been addressed. So property values, yes, we just don't know. I'm not saying they're definitely going to go down, but we don't know until it happens. But there's people that are so upset they're talking about leaving the area if they start moving in with these commercial businesses. So I'll move on to under the camp. Is there a landscape buffer required for this? It's kind of weird in the code if there's a landscape buffer required.
I thought and you all tell us, I thought the last camp proposal that we had when we were looking at it, it required a pretty significant, maybe D, is that a significant buffer? Pretty much all around, on all sides of the property.
It requires a D-level landscape buffer along common property lines with residents.
Right, okay, so I don't think that's been addressed, and I don't see it on the site plan, so I'm assuming that's not happening. And under parking, the parking lot has to accommodate emergency vehicles. It has to be large enough for emergency vehicles to pull in, turn around, and leave. And I can't tell by the size of that parking lot if that's been addressed. Is it big enough to accommodate emergency vehicles? Also, some of these campsites are, you can't tell by that, but this is very hilly terrain. This is 25% slope is what most of this is on. Now, I don't know if you guys are going to allow that. The code says you can't build structure on 25%, so I don't know if that's going to be allowed or not. So the remote, which are basically the 9, the 4 and the 5 up there on the plan, those are remote. It's not like you're going to come in and go straight to those. You're going to come in, you're going to go up the property, and you're going to circle back around, okay? There's an old logging road. My question is, do those remote parking spots, camping sites require a road, and a road that emergency vehicles can get up and down on? Does that road have to be paved like the parking lot has to be paved? Does that access road, does that have to be paved to get to those remote sites? Yeah, 178020, it's a conservation area. I won't get into all that. But back to the hunting and the whole safety thing, Mr. Fulmer mentioned, all about that. And he, quote unquote, you can't stop people from trespassing. You just can't do it. So I've lived out there for 20 years. I know what that's like. And you're not going to stop these hunters when they're out there. If they're out there and if they see a nice doe over there, they're not going to stop because there's a purple ribbon. And there's going to be up to 80 people. I think that's what this camp holds, is 80 people capacity at full. That's not like 3 or 4 people on a property wandering around. This is 80 people at one time on a property. And I don't see how you can, if there's only one, she's got one person, I guess, that's going to be the manager. How's one person going to control where everybody goes? Purple ribbons are not going to stop people from trespassing. And I'm not talking about her guests necessarily going on other properties. I'm talking about people that are in the area that are used to hunting that land and have been hunting that land for a really long time. A purple ribbon isn't going to stop them from going on that land if they don't see anybody.
But you clearly acknowledge that they have no right to be on that land if it doesn't belong to them. I mean, it might be her responsibility to try to keep people off, but
I'm not saying it's her fault at all. I'm just saying it's not going to stop.
Now, and I get the point. Now, it was a little frustrating, but the concept is extraordinary, and I get it. I got a lot of cousins in North Carolina that have a lot of land, and they hunt like there's no tomorrow. They love it, and I understand the behavior. But fundamentally, to punish to say someone can't use the property because someone else is going to trespass and possibly shoot somebody is not something that I'm having a lot of tolerance for. I get it, and it's important, and they need to address it. But at the same time, to say, well, because something might happen, I just having a tough time with it. I just want to make sure that at least we all acknowledge that if they own the land or you own your land and someone's on it without permission, then they're being on your land without permission.
Absolutely. I'm not arguing that. But
right.
I'm just saying trespassing is trespassing.
And I'm not arguing the behavior you're talking about either. So
right. I'm just talking about the safety of 80 people on a property. That's what I'm talking about.
I understand that. I get that. Fair enough. And not to be argumentative, I just want to make sure we were all clear on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could ask, do you know of anybody in this area that has what we sometimes refer to in the legal community as a profit or a right to go upon that property and hunt?
I don't know. You would have to ask these people back here that hunt. I don't.
Okay, well, I mean, you're in opposition to it, and I'm not a hunter, but that doesn't mean I have.
I'm not either.
I mean, it doesn't mean I have any problems with it.
Right.
As long as they don't shoot me, I'm
That's
just
right.
fine
That's
and
right.
dandy.
Yeah.
But some people enjoy it, like some of the chairman's family. I just want to make sure you don't know of anybody and you don't have any right to go on the property.
No.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
No.
And you don't think that they've issued, and I'm looking at Ms. Wolf right now over your shoulder, and I don't think she's issued any licenses to anybody to go upon the property to hunt it or.
Yeah, I certainly hope not.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Coates, also, I mean, I get all your concerns, but right now, this property could be, as I see it, easily used right now without much work. You could put 5 houses on it, probably fairly large houses with presumably 4 or 5 family members each. So right now, the property, you could have, a permitted use would be to allow a number of families onto this property. And that's a current permitted use. The concerns you have, how are they any different than if a permitted use was used for residential versus what's going on with this camp?
Well, I think part of that is the fact that you're talking about 5 residences, and that's their residence. They have just an innate wanting to take care of the property and it's their home. you don't take care of when you go stay somewhere or whatever, you don't take care of it like it's your home. I mean, you don't secure it and have a place in your heart for it. You got people that are going to be on this property that, I mean, once they leave that property, it's not their property. And I asked Aaron on the call the other day if she was going to allow to have the entire property, like, rented out. Can somebody come in and just take the whole property? And she said yes. So now that introduces a whole thing. Who knows? I mean, heaven forbid it would be a bachelorette party that would come in and rent this property, but there's nothing to stop it. I mean, what's she going to do? Say, no, you can't rent this property because you're having a bachelorette party. I guess she could. I just think that myself and a lot of other concerned people aren't going to get past the safety issue, and I'm not really concerned about the noise because I think she's probably correct. She's not going to allow any PA or anything like that. I don't think the noise is going to be a concern, so I'm not going to address that. My main concern is really the fact that it's not a camp. It's not under the code. It's a camp. It's a campground. It's a commercial campground.
And so when you read that, you thought there was a distinction. Tell me how are you getting to that distinction?
A camp, when you think of camp, I mean, why didn't it say campground if it's supposed to be a campground? Why does it say camp? A camp is like I said, the Easter Seal camp or the 4-H camp or a church camp or something like that, where you've got a group of people, coming in and you've got counselors and you've got all of this stuff going on, kind of herding everybody. This isn't like that. This is individual people coming in and renting a camper or renting a tent, just like they would a hotel room or any other, rental property, Airbnb type thing. And you're going to have one person securing it.
So, I guess to our codes folks, how should we be thinking about camp versus campground?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to read from the code. This, the determination, to me, there's not a distinction between camp and campground, but there's not a campground definition in the zoning code. But John Michael, who was zoning administrator at the time this was filed, classified this. I'm going to read to you the definition of camp, but camp says a place where children, youth, and adults gather together for spiritual, recreational, or educational purposes in an organized and supervised manner, and where overnight lodging, for example, tents and cabins, food, counseling, religious, and outdoor recreational activities may be provided. That's the definition as defined by camp. In my mind, I could do camp and campground.
Can you repeat those items one more time, please? I'm sorry.
I'll give you the whole definition again. Camp is a place where children, youth, and adults gather together for spiritual, recreational, and educational purposes in an organized and supervised manner, and where overnight lodging, tents and cabins, food, counseling, religious, and outdoor recreational activities may be provided. We do not have, your traditional KOA definition in the zoning code. Now, let me contrast to you the other.
So, I'm sorry, Joey. So, if you had a KOA campground, what would it be considered?
Yeah, we don't have that now. So, and let me read the other half. There's really kind of two we'd go through. So, the other use is hotel. Hotel says any commercial establishment or portion of such establishment which whose principal use provides that such structure is occupied or intended or designed for occupancy by transients for lodging and sleeping purposes within the area of the jurisdiction of the metro government, and includes any hotel, tourist court, tourist camp, tourist cabin, motel, or any place meeting this definition, and B, it has to have both those two things, accepts on-site reservations for accommodation. So I can't speak to John's train of thought, but I think what he has to do and weigh those two choices is which is it more closely akin to.
So did it trigger on, I know that last time it was important to have noted that there were no on-site reservations. And so maybe that, I don't know if that was a trigger, but you said a tourist camp. And what was the other? It was a tourist camp and another tourist
Tourist cabin?
cabin. And then does it say you have to have, I guess the question is, if you don't have on-site reservations, can you still be a hotel or a tourist camp or a tourist cabin?
For us, the hotel land use.
I mean, I would think you could, but it sounds like if you allow someone to have an on-site reservation, then you are in that category.
Right. Well,
But would you also potentially be in that category is that a requirement? And I don't know what I'm
And
not
she's,
looking at the
remember, she's flipping this.
language. Hang on,
I'm sorry.
give me 1 second.
Okay.
Let's let
Okay.
us get through with him, and then we'll get back to you, and you can, well, I'll have you respond to what you heard.
Yep. So the definition that John, came with was camp, is this use. Hotel for us has to have on-site, the ability to take on-site reservations. Now, that can either be done a couple ways. One, with a kiosk that, I come to the establishment, do I have an opening this night? I pull into the facility, I go to the kiosk or the attendant there, and I'd like to rent a space. Do you have one? Yes. I take payment either by card, credit card. I can do a Bluetooth key for a hotel room situation.
So, Mr. Hargis,
but it
also,
does have to have
so that I want to get this procedurally right. So the zoning administrator already determined this was a camp, correct?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so I mean, and this is not an item A appeal.
It is not.
This is, okay, so okay, that's what I needed to know. Fine.
Mr. Hargis, so if I know that there are campgrounds in Davidson County. I know Music Valley Drive around Opryland, there's several of them. What zoning would permit a campground versus what we have here?
For us, those on Music Valley Drive are in commercial PUD, so it's not really applicable. We do not have, and I've actually lobbied, so as interim zoning administrator, I've asked the council, can we please create a use that's separate and distinct from camp and separate and distinct from hotel for something like KOA? Because we do get asked where they go. Again, I don't mean to question John's determination in this. I don't know that I necessarily agree.
Yeah.
In the sense that I've traditionally, when asked, put them under the hotel category because it has that subset definition of tourist camp. Is more akin to KOA than, say, camp.
And I will note, since the people in disagreement are just looking at the traffic study, I will note that it does, under the parking demand analysis, it does reference transient habitation as the basis for their parking demand analysis, which would, I think, be more in line with maybe a hotel definition. So just.
Any other questions for the code staff at this point? All right, sir. And well, we do, and we've still been asking some questions, and so I know there's still a fair amount of time or a little bit of time left, but I will ask you, sir, if you would, because you raised the issue of camp versus campground, based on. Did you have a comment on that? I think you did because you were.
Well, normally with a camp, you've got a group,
right,
and they check in, and they stay for a week, and then they check out. That's not what's going on here. She's going to have 30 different campsites, different people, and she's going to flip it. I mean, it's up for, I guess you can do it by the night. It's probably more like a 3-night sort of thing, just like an Airbnb. I mean, to me, there's no difference. It's the same concept like a campground, where you go in and you pay for a site, and you pull your camper in. The difference is she's already got everything there. But, I mean, you guys know what's going on. I'm just bringing up questions and pointing things out.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for this person? And I know we have other people that want to speak too.
Yeah.
So whoever is next, if you would, again, make sure your red light's on and state your name and address and tell us what you have in mind.
I'm Diane McClintock. I live at 2058 Shaw Road, which is directly across the street from this venture. And while I appreciate what Erin is trying to do, does she appreciate what it does to us? I'm heartsick about this. I want you guys to know it. It's an invasion on my peace of mind, my peace and quiet. And we come here, we talk, we defer, and we defer and defer. And it's because she's trying to comply with some of what we are asking for. But I don't think there's anything she could do to make me want this. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. For all the same things that Tim just said, and for all the other opposition that's been spoken before. That's it. You guys are killing me. You're killing me.
All right, thank you. Next.
Could we ask everybody to stand that's in opposition of this? Thank you.
And ma'am, if you would state your name and address, please.
Marty Hartman, 5471 Licton Pike. I had written to the zoning board yesterday and to Ms. Gamble. I am concerned about some things that maybe people have not mentioned. First and foremost, the safety of the residents and the campers. Traffic in the area is horrendous. I waited through 20 cars and an 18-wheeler to turn into my driveway the other day. And I just believe that Ms. Wolf is greatly underestimating the number of vehicles coming and going. We are in Nashville. People will be coming to CMA Fest and staying out there. I think it'll be, I love what she's doing. It's cool, it's cute. I would love to stay somewhere like that. But I think people are going to be running up and down the roads. Shaw Road has no shoulders. It's unlit. Licton Pike has become a huge thoroughfare for people avoiding I-65 in the afternoons and the mornings. You cannot even go to the mailbox. We've got people drag racing on the road. Large groups of bicyclers meet out there, and all the traffic going to Union Hill Raceway for the weekends. So I just feel like she's greatly underestimating how many people will be coming. I could see friends meeting at the campsite, so you would have 2 or more vehicles per campsite. Deliveries, I know her other site has food available to campers to order in. They can have meals left in their camper, so you would have those deliveries, trash pickup. The workers, and when you swap out during the day, or people just, driving around just to see the countryside. And I do the same thing when I go somewhere on vacation. So I am worried about the extra cars and on these roads. The roads are dangerous. The second thing I worry about is the impact on the environment. There is a creek on the front part of the property that will have to be spanned with a bridge. So we're going to have to worry about what you're going to disturb when you do that, the impact on erosion, the impact on wildlife, which might be in the creek, and we also have to worry about the creek flooding. Where in the floodplain is this site located, and could the campers get out if it floods? And that's been happening more and more in recent years. So I feel like there needs to be more of a plan for that. And then also on the line of safety is campfires. If we have 30 campfires going out there, it's just going to be hard to keep that under control, and especially when it gets to be dry weather and that kind of thing. And then how do you control people going out and cutting more wood or more brush if they run out? And that impacts the environment also. But And Ms. Wolf may not even rent to large parties knowingly. They have a tendency to show up. On the other end of Licton Pike several weeks ago, a university fraternity showed up for a large party.
Let me stop you for one moment, because your time's expired. I want to make sure the board members, if you wish to give them more time, if you guys will designate for purposes of...
In a case like this, it's usually not unusual to give 2 minutes to each side. If there any...
How much time does the opponent have?
He has about 3 minutes left.
3:45 left on his time.
Okay, we'll add 2 minutes to each time. And so, ma'am, if the person next to you wishes to speak, then
Okay.
both have 2
Anyway,
minutes.
there's not any way to control who shows up. There was a large fraternity party on the other end of Licton Pike several weeks ago. Alcohol a car run off in the ditch, and I think it was an Airbnb, if I'm correct, but they just showed up. That many people did not rent the property together. One or two people rented it and called all their friends. So I'm just worried that this is a bad start, and once this starts, it can just grow and grow and grow. That's kind of what happened to our area with Union Hill Racetrack, and it has grown to something that none of us wants.
Okay, sir?
Hi, I'm Scott Clausing, 4540 Brick Church Pike, adjoining property to the north. I think I'd first just like to say thank you to Erin. I think the accommodations she's made based on the feedback have been pretty impressive, and I'd like to acknowledge that first. I'd also like to acknowledge, this is her job, this is her business. All of the dozens of people here, we're not working right now. We're not getting paid. We care enough about this to leave our jobs twice to come here to support, to oppose this effort. It means a lot. In response to the ability to build homes on this site, I understand the speculation. I just built a home on top of one of these hills. There's a reason people don't do it. It is not profitable at all. It's phenomenally expensive. The logistics are nearly impossible, and that's not a real possibility. There is one buildable site on this lot, and it will be forever disturbed when that pavilion is built, period. In terms of fire safety, oh man, I mean, you can hear the stories from the neighbors here, and if any of y'all live in the area, when a fire gets out of control on these hills and the wind blows, it's the scariest thing in the world. And having 30 fires, I mean, that's not allowed in Davidson County in the first place. I just can't imagine the risk here. And there's no way to get an emergency vehicle up there. There's no fire hydrants anywhere near, within a mile of this area. There is no fire hydrant on that road. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And yeah, Joey, I've got a bad angle, so I can't really see, but thank you. Okay.
Short straw.
30 seconds?
How many seconds?
You get 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Go. I'm Dan Hedrick. I live at 5136 Licton Pike, and I'm one of those people that own 7 beautiful acres in this area. And as I look at the map and what the plans are in a rural area, it's really a high-density housing development that they're putting in here. And if you're going to subdivide that property for individual homes, I get that. I could not resist them or not supporting that. I'm also concerned about the environmental impact. If you take a look at how much vegetation is going to be stripped off of this property for building roads, for building pavilions, for building the bathhouses, all of this additional water flow is going into that creek back there. I think there is a pollution question sooner or later, and that will also increase flooding.
All right,
and
sir,
the
thank
cause
you.
of fires.
Your time is up, and at this point, we're going to call time, and we'll hear from the applicant, and they have a chance for rebuttal. I appreciate y'all wanting to speak, but we're starting to hear the same arguments, and we've already seen a show of folks that support all of these arguments, so we appreciate you being here. All right, thank you. And then we're going to hear back from the applicant, who has 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Well, actually, you did the math, Joey, so 6 minutes and 17 seconds for rebuttal.
Biggest thing is there's one communal fire that will be near the parking lot in the communal area. There are not 30 fire pits. The definition of camp and hotel was, we spent a lot of time with John Michael on that. The definition is very clear that it has and accepts on-site reservation, and she does not. She also has yoga and other spiritual activities that they can partake during the day. So the use, we haven't spent much time defining that and making sure it fit within the use, because that's not what was challenged. But we did spend a lot of time on that before we filed the application for the special exception. There's an absolute limitation to the use of the property with this approval. If she ever tried to put a 31 31st campsite on there, it could be sent to environmental court. This is not a stepping stone to further use. And as far as compatibility with the neighbors, right now at the last hearing, there's an existing structure on there that's somewhat dilapidated, and the neighbor said that they couldn't see it through all the vegetation. You know, the intent is for all the existing vegetation to remain, except for just to cut the 20-foot wide road in, or 24-foot wide for fire, and we will make sure that the fire truck can pull around. We're going to have to meet all the regulations that the city has. You know, we don't demonstrate fire access on the BZA site plan because we'll have to address that. You know, we're here to ask for the use of the property as a special exception. I think it goes without saying that I'm sure that she would, if any trespassers, she's going to call the police. Nobody's going to be able to rent these and then invite their friends. You know, those people would be immediately evicted. Right now, she has a structure signed up in the contract for people that check out late to find them. I'm sure that the same could easily be incorporated for noise. You know, you can be asked to leave. I mean, all those things could happen, but then they will be penalized. Landscape buffers, this is not going to be a cleared property. There's a logging road that was mentioned, and that's how they're going to get some of these tents to the higher elevations, and there's not going to be a paved road. And if the fire marshal says that he needs a paved road to get up there, then we're going to have to find a different location for those that fit within a boundary. There's no intent to clear. The 150-foot buffer or setback around the property satisfies the type D buffer, and if it doesn't, we're going to have to go out and field mark the trees and locate them and demonstrate that it meets it. So that's why nothing's noted on there. We're not asking for a variance from that. I hope that all these things are understood, that we're not asking for deviations. I guess the last one that I saw, if you recall the last time, in order to flatten out the ground where some of these will sit, she intends to build sort of a wooden platform versus pouring a concrete slab or, you know, anything more impactful. She just needs to flatten it out a little bit to put the tent or to put the other structure. So it's very environmentally sensitive. That is very near and dear to her heart. She's not a developer. She's just an operator of a sort of a retreat. So I hope that that's understood. Aaron, do you want to add
Dave, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I can. I'm going to ask some specific questions, and I think between the two of you, you can probably answer them. And how long are your reservations going to be for as a normal?
You mean?
Are they a week? Do you have a minimum week stay? Do you have a minimum one-night stay? Do you have a... And I'm trying to get back to the definition of camp, transient, so I at least clue you to that particular part. Trust me, I'm looking at our Metro Legal over there real quick, right next to Member Cole, and I may put you on the spot in a minute, but still. So
I hope to have a 2-night minimum.
Two-night minimum.
To answer your question.
But you're not going to have a requirement for more than a single night?
I hope to, but I don't want to commit to that right now.
I understand the profit margin
yes.
side of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was some concern on the fire risk. I've never seen the property. I have to be honest with you, have no clue. Wouldn't know it if I was standing on it right now. But how are you going to mitigate that? I mean, you're going to have a bunch of goats walking up there chewing the, sort of like what they should do in California to help with the wildfires out there, but they elect not to. I'm just trying to understand that because obviously there's a great deal of concern for that.
Yeah. The communal fire pit area will be next to the pavilion, which is where most of the management is going to be most of the time, and so can be supervised. That area is where most of our sites are concentrated as well. So all of our grounds maintenance, our regular grounds maintenance and landscaping efforts are concentrated around there. That area is currently clear. And that's why the site plan is what it is. And like Jay said, I'm not exactly sure what the fire codes are going to require. Of course.
But you're going to comply?
Of course, I'll comply.
Okay. Let's talk about the food and the trash, because and I'm trying to go through some of the specific things that I picked up on. Are you selling food there?
I provide pre-orders because, like we discussed, I don't take on-site reservations, so I don't have like a stash of food that can be delivered. So a week in advance, at least, I need orders, and I have a local vendor that makes like burger kits and grilled pizza kits that they deliver, and I stock in the fridges before people come to check in.
Okay,
so that's how that works currently.
It's renting food, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like DIY, cook it yourself kind of stuff. It's just like eliminating
Travago, where you just put the little card under it and it makes it happen.
Yeah.
Did I get out of order? But that wasn't meant to be an advertisement?
No, you're fine. I
Travago.
was just trying to signal. I keep hearing. It's hard for me to hear, and there's a lot of chatter. I just was trying to remind folks to, without saying, please don't keep the chatter down. But now, since you ask, I'll say, please keep the chatter down.
All right.
So we can hear everybody and have a respectful hearing. And
Okay. There was some concern about combustibles, like people going out and chopping down a tree or something like that so they could build a bigger bonfire in the communal pit. Are you having wood delivered?
Yeah.
Are you controlling that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Currently, I get bricks at a time and have a.
Please, folks, they gave you the same courtesy that the chairman's asked. I'm going to ask the exact same thing of the people out there because I'm trying to get some answers, and that's all I'm trying to do. There was a discussion about there's a creek that you're going to have to cross to get access. How are you going to span it? And I'm going to ask a specific question because I do some legal work here. Are there any Nashville crayfish in that creek? Because they are a endangered species, oh, by the way.
There's an existing crossing that can be utilized for construction, but there will not be permitted any disturbance of the creek bed unless you go through an aquatic resources alteration permit that is not necessary.
Okay.
We can easily span it without disturbing the creek bed, without disturbing the side slopes of the creek.
So you've already done that part of the research?
Well, it's just something you know.
I understand.
And that's all part of the stormwater plan that we'll have to prepare. There's a high probability that the parking lot ends up in some form of pervious material, whether it be grass paves or some sort of pavers, because if you do some sort of bioretention or other form of treatment, you have to have a pipe to get the water out that doesn't fit, and then we'd be piping into the creek. So those are all things we will have to comply with.
Yeah, and also just on we want to protect this environment, and so the wastewater management system that we identified is designed for sensitive environments. It's used right now in a development on Percy Priest Lake. It's used in Williamson County schools, and it is a very expensive self-contained system that fully treats the water. So if anything, this is eons beyond a normal septic system, and way more considerate of the environment.
One of the hardest things that you can do right now is to find a soil scientist to answer their phone. So we haven't been able to advance that part of the design. Great opportunity for anybody trying to find a new career.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Any other questions at this point?
I do. And it comes back to that definition of camp. And I'm trying to understand exactly how you feel that, how you would argue that this meets the definition of a camp here. And can you explain to me how this place is a place for children, youth, and adults to gather together for spiritual, recreational, or educational purposes, specifically in an organized and supervised manner?
I'm going to let Aaron dive into that. The one thing that speared John Michael in the direction he went to is the word "and" accepts on-site reservation for hotels, so it can't be a hotel. So going back to camp, you can explain some of the activities that you have, and I'll pull up the definition so you can read it again.
I currently don't have this at my location on Bloomsbury Farm because they have their own educational things and they don't want me infringing with them. But my vision and goal is to offer organized activities like yoga, meditations, and also educational nature-oriented workshops and things like that fall into that definition. Fall into that definition of organized and supervised, because there will be leaders and professionals paid to lead those activities.
And so at your current location, how do you take reservations? Is that online?
Yes,
Is that,
sir.
through the website? And so if I decided on Friday morning that I wanted to just get away for the weekend, could I reserve that place for the weekend?
Mm-mm.
When is the cutoff?
The day before.
The day before, okay. And that would be the case here? Is that that midnight and the night before? Is that, okay.
And so, Mr. Lucas, to make sure I understand, you're saying the requirement in the definition of lodging, it says "and accepts on-site reservations," and because you don't accept on-site reservations, it can't be within that definition, is what you're saying.
That was John Michael's determination,
So-
and she can't take day of reservations because that directly relates to staffing.
And facilities. I mean, I don't really have an office. It's the purpose is for it to be a campground. So the facility we're building is for customers.
So I guess to me, so you're basically making the or saying, you again, speaking for the former zoning administrator, that if you're not a campground, you must be a camp? I mean, what makes you a camp?
There's no definition for campground.
I mean, I understand that, well, there's no definition. Well, the campground would, there's a definition for transient camp, which is part of the hotel definition. I mean, Joey specifically mentioned transient camp and transient cabin as part of the hotel definition. And what I heard you say was that because it said "and takes on day of reservations," that's why it was determined that your project wasn't in the hotel category. But I think Mr. Newton had asked specific, and maybe you've already answered it in terms of, you just described the programming, but what makes you an actual camp? Why would, you made the argument that you're not a hotel, but how specifically, and that was your question? Okay, and you did talk about that, but to me that's it. I guess I'm not following the logic that says that if you're not a hotel, then you must be a camp.
The services that she's talking about offering, either yoga or you can explain better with them, but they fit under that definition and the description of it. And so I'll pull it back up so you can explain that better.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, well, I was going to let them finish their train of thought, and then I'm going to go back to the food.
So the definition of camp is a place where children, youth, and adults, sorry to repeat what we already read, but camp means a place where children, youth, and adults gather together for spiritual, recreational, or educational purposes in an organized and supervised manner, and where overnight lodging, tents, cabins, food, counseling, religious, and outdoor recreational activities may be provided. So I host children, youth, and adults in small groups, usually 4 people, but sometimes more, in overnight lodging, tents, and cabins. And I provide food, and I provide, in this scenario, outdoor recreational activities in a supervised manner.
In the form of hiking, yoga?
Yeah, I'm sorry, hiking, yoga, meditation, sound baths. These are my list of things. And nature-oriented workshops like natural dyeing and things like that.
Okay.
Which brings me to my question about food that you're providing in these units. You did state that you've got to make a reservation 24 hours in advance. It can be for one night or what have you. Say you have people coming in that have special dietary requests or requirements. Are you going to change the food out for them? Say you've got a vegan that wants to come in, or me, I don't eat red meat. I don't want to have anything in there that's,
Yeah.
or maybe I'm only going to eat fish or seafood or something like that. How are you going to do that? I mean, I think everybody is coming down to, is it a camp or is it a something else? And I'm grappling with that. I'll just flat tell you. I wish you had longer minimum stays. That's causing me a bit of a problem right now. So however you two want to figure out how to answer that, although I'm just one of a bunch up here, I need some convincing, I guess. Help me out there with food.
For the
and
food
everything.
specifically, it's a week. I can't do it faster than a week, so that's the cutoff. And I accommodate all dietary restrictions. The local vendor that I use is a fully licensed caterer, and she has substitutions for everything. So some of the options on the menu are vegan. Some might not be gluten-free, but she can make gluten-free if needed. And so, but I can't do any of that, the day before. I need time.
It's a time-saving amenity that keeps you from having to go through the hassle of bringing it. It's shopping for you, essentially.
Any other questions at this point? Did you have anything else to add at this point?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And I believe that, is the council lady interested in coming to speak?
Made like a turtle, right?
Yeah. All right, Council Lady Gamble, welcome back.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you for addressing me today. Thank you for your service. Thank you, everyone who came out, took time out of their day to come here to speak on this item. I do join the neighbors in opposition of this project. As it's been stated earlier, we had a community meeting on the 11th, on Monday, to review the revised plan as a result of some of the comments from the previous hearing regarding this project. And I appreciate Aaron Wolf listening and trying to address those concerns. However, during our meeting on Monday, there were still a lot of unanswered questions and concerns. And I'll just, in addition to what I'm hearing today about the distinction between a camp and a campground, which I think was very well articulated by Mr. Coates, this does not fall within the definition of a camp. It more so falls in the definition of an hotel, and that is a major concern. In addition to the infrastructure concerns, Shaw Road, as we've stated before, is a two-lane road. There is a lot of need of repair and just infrastructure improvements that we need with the current population, not to mention having additional traffic. I don't agree with the position that there's no traffic study needed for this project. There is very much a traffic study needed for this project, so that has not been addressed. And then third, and maybe most important, just the quality of life question. This project does not seem to provide any improved quality of life for the community. And that's one thing that I look at when I look at developments that come into the community. How does it enhance the community? And I just don't see how this project does that. I see how, and I've gotten many emails from residents, neighbors, about how it diminishes their quality of life, but I have not gotten any information or seen for myself any content that would suggest that it would improve the quality of life in the community. So for those reasons, I stand in opposition of this project, and I hope that you all will support that as well.
And so, all right, thank y'all. And so basically, in terms of impact on the community, you view it as a negative impact on the community?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions for the council lady? All right, we sure appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you.
And with that, we will close the public hearing and have a discussion. And, there are two issues that have been talked about. One may be less important depending upon how we address the first. And the first is that they are on the docket. It was determined that they should be on the docket. And if it's determined that we feel like they meet the criteria for the reason being on the docket, then we can ask, I think, our council about the second issue, which is the camp versus campground, which I think many of us have expressed a concern over that issue. I think we all understand how we got here, but the fact that we're here, I think, is of concern. It is to me, and I think others have expressed it also. But it seems to me like that while the applicant has done an awful lot and really presented a pretty unique and interesting concept for this piece of property, that I think at the first hearing I had said, 10 or 15 years from now might be viewed as the jewel of the neighborhood rather than the concern. One of our criteria is, and it may not, it may have all the disasters that some of the neighbors have predicted. But to me, on paper, without having a sense of the impact on the community, it looked like a pretty cool project on paper. But one of our criteria is the impact of the community, and I think having the volume of neighbors that have expressed some pretty serious concerns, along with the council lady, also echoing those concerns and expressing those as the elected official of that area, give me some pretty serious pause as to whether or not they've met that criteria, especially regards to safety, traffic, and that type of thing. So
I would echo that, and I think in regards to kind of the traffic, even that was major part of our evaluation. The fact that it does in their traffic study that they provided, it lists it transient habitation, including hotel, motel, extended stay, hotel, motel, single room occupancy, residential facility, and short-term rental facility, and figuring out their parking requirements. So, I mean, I feel like, I do understand, and I don't know if necessarily that's on the issue for us to discuss right now, or for us to, decide on. But it feels much more in the spirit to me of a hotel than it does a camp in the first place. And again, I don't, except for that it doesn't take on-site reservations. That's like the one kind of gotcha moment there. So, but it doesn't really fall. I mean, the spirit of a camp definition is much more like Camp Widgiewagon or Deer Run or one of these other camps around here than it does maybe what they're doing. And I like you said, I think it seems like it could be a great place, but it could also have negative impacts that the community's expressed, and they certainly believe that it won't be. So I think I would agree with your sentiments there.
So, if it were just whether if we got to decide this just by taking a vote in the neighborhood as to who was for it and who was against it, our job would be a lot easier. And I get that the neighbors have a lot of concerns, but our job here is if it meets the special conditions, if it meets the conditions, it gets approved. And I do understand the neighbors' concerns and fears, and but there will have to be permitting through stormwater, fire, everybody else. I wish that there was a special exception for a campground as opposed to a camp, because I think that is a little unclear. To me, it's not a hotel because it doesn't take on-site reservations, so it just can't fall under that definition. So then the question is, where does it fall? And I think that it is what they're doing on site does fall within the definition of camp. And so I think that, and I think the applicant has bent over backwards to do everything that can possibly be done to run this the way, she's allowed to run it and still appease the neighbors. And I really think that the environmental impact and the other impacts of this use could be far less than if you have 5 houses there with 5 members of a household and you got 25 people who are coming and going, and you're going to have a lot more impervious surface. Or even if you have one house with 5 or 6 people in it. But again, I view my role here as very limited, and that is if the conditions are met, then we should approve it and really have to approve it. And I understand the concerns that have been raised, but I think all the conditions have been met, and that's where I fall on it.
Okay. I wasn't having a whole lot of problems until we got to the one-night stay. And I tried everything I could to sort of hint, but I'm also like one of our other members here. I think you've met the requirements. I wish you had a 3 or a 4 minimum. And I understand the business model very, very well. I don't want to be the lawyer going to 501 Broadway and crying a sale on a foreclosure. And I'm going to look at our friends from legal counsel over there for a little help, because you articulated it a whole lot better than I did, and that's supposed to be my job. What is it? It doesn't walk and quack like a hotel, but it doesn't really walk and quack like a real duck. Help me out here a little bit, some guidance.
I can say the best guidance as far as these 2 definitions, I'm going to defer to the zoning administrator. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be his decision one way or the other.
Been decided, has it not? We're here.
As far as I understand, and I'll let Mr. Hargis speak for himself as far as this issue. I know that John Michael was weighed in, but obviously with Mr. Hargis here.
That was very good at passing. I'm so impressed. A fantastic lawyer.
Okay, so, thanks for that passing. It has not been the policy. Now, I want you to keep in mind, let me talk historical context. This room is named after Metro's first zoning administrator, and Mr. West served 55 years in that capacity. I worked for him for 20, up until his death. And it was never, after Sonny passed away, Bill Herbert, I acted in an interim role, as I am now, until Mr. Herbert was named zoning administrator and earned the job in that case, and I worked for Bill till last. But it was never really the policy of zoning administrators. Understand, you've had 3. I would be 4th in an interim capacity twice. It's never been the policy of a later zoning administrator midstream of a case to go, he's totally wrong. We're going to call it something else. So I want to preface that by saying, in the zoning code, in 1740.010 spells out, the zoning administrator shall interpret and administer the provisions of this code. So all the gray spaces between these letters fall upon the zoning administrator to make a call. John made a call in this case that this is camp. It's not really relevant, me sitting here, whether I agree with him or not, but I continue this case rolls under that. The opposition has not filed an item A appeal appealing that determination. So to the extent I won't weigh on that, but I do make calls in that regard of if someone comes to me, which is it? It's more of this, more of that. I've got to make those calls. In this case, John has made the call, it's camp. So that's why this case is before you.
Are you saying that if we were to pass this, the opposition could still file an item A appeal? Is that how it would work? Because
I would say there's a possibility of that occurring. Yeah, I mean, the code does provide the ability of parties to appeal the decision of the zoning administrator or the issuance of a permit there could be a res judicata argument that their opportunity to appeal is lapsed with this board's decision. So I would advise all parties to seek legal counsel as to what their rights might be. Because you've got to give some certainty to applicants that once the board's acted and the time limits prescribed under the code have been met, that it's final. There's some finality to it. So as it relates to this definition, I'm letting John's definition stand in this instance. Whether I agree with him,
Clearly erroneous.
I think it's wrong, but that's not in any way that I agree. My pitch is to Council Lady Gamble and the 39 other members of the council to create a clearly defined definition that carves out something like they're wanting to do. But we do get requests all the time. I want to put something, KOA wants to locate. And I've got two in this county, one's in a PUD and the other's in Goodlettsville city limits. So, we don't know what to call them. But to the extent of, to the comment of it requires on-site, we do encounter this daily from a short-term rental perspective of short-term rental operators leasing buildings in an attempt to avoid permitting process with short-term rentals, filing for permits as a hotel. So there's different building code issues when I'm hotel versus an R3 occupancy under the building code. But for us, if I tell those folks, if you're not wishing to be a short-term rental, you have to be a hotel. You have to accept reservations. It's not a, hey, I don't, so I'm opting out of this definition. I look at it from the other perspective. I'm mandating that you provide those services to meet the definition. Other than that, you are short-term rental. So I'm kind of got a default position to deal with in this case. But
Any other questions for the?
I don't know if that made it up at all, but I wanted to give you my thought process of why I'm not open.
Great job over there, dancing around this.
Yeah.
Really well.
Mr. Cole, did you have anything to? Not to put you on the spot, but we've all been yapping, and you're over there. And
No. So I'm in the same vein as Mr. Lawless with and Mr. Hargis on how do we classify this. So I totally understand that John Michael classified it as a camp, but it's definitely in a gray area. Yeah.
And I guess to me, if it doesn't meet and I know that it's not technically our position here to determine the use of it. That's been determined for us. But you would think that maybe this would be something that would be better to have determined, like Mr. Hargis said, and make our job a lot easier in this. And maybe through like a, if this was a PUD or or some kind of other special use that was determined with more community input. I mean, that is always an option, and they've chosen to go this route to try to go through the special exception. I'm still having a hard time, justifying a vote to approve it with me not believing that the use of the property is in line with what the zoning administrator determined. So, and I guess that's my quandary.
Okay. Let me ask the board if anyone has a stab at a motion one way or the other.
Can I preface before y'all start that?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I want to be careful that what's before you is, this is a camp. John's made that determination, that's final. What's before you is this request. Does it comply with the regulation or does it not? I think it's not fair to the applicant to render a decision on the use, and that's not in front of you today. The use has been decided. But so, to the extent there's a motion coming, I think we ought to deny it because I think it's hotel. I think that's improper of this board. If Alex disagrees with me, I think you got to judge the case that's in front of you on its merits.
And so to address what you're saying, I think it is a gray area too. I think that it falls more within the definition of camp than without. But I'm just viewing this as there's kind of an item A appeal built into this. So what that means is we've got a decision by the zoning administrator, and unless it's clearly erroneous, then I have to accept the zoning administrator's conclusion on that. And John Michael determined it fell within the definition of camp. Yeah. So, and I think Mr. Hargis has a good point about, I don't know whether the opponents could bring up another appeal based on an item A appeal. So for myself, I'm considering it kind of built into this.
So that a motion?
Right here.
So sticking to the docket, then let's have, if someone has a motion one way or the other on the question of the special exception.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the special exception.
And I'll second it.
There's a motion to approve the special exception, and there's a second. Is there any further discussion? And I think we have discussed this once, and I do have, personally have some strong reservations. In fact, I'm not sure that they have met the one criteria about impact on the community, which is a criteria for the special exception. And so I continue to believe that. But any other discussion on the special exception? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve the special exception, raise your hand and say aye. All those opposed, raise your hand and say aye. That motion fails 3-2. Is there another motion?
Mr. Taylor, I think that kills the board's rules. This is a tie vote under our rules, so the motion's still on the table.
Do we?
For the next 30 days.
So we'll have it for 30 days. And John, well, and again, thank you for being here, not to revisit what we did in the past, but in the past we had taken basically both motions so that the folks that were not here, including you've heard most of it, but you can go back and hear the part that you missed.
She brought her tardy.
I know, can listen to the part that you missed and participate. But so it does open the door for either motion to be made next time upon hearing. So we'll just, so to the audience, any motion before the board has to have 4 votes in order to be approved. This motion did not get 4 votes. It got 2 votes. There were 3 votes against it, which it's easy to presume had we made a motion to deny this camp, it would have 3 votes against it and 2 votes or 3 for it, 2 against. It would go the other way. So in that case, as Mr. Hargett said, by our rules, it stays on our docket for 30 days. And the remaining 2 members of the board will have an opportunity to view the hearing that we've heard today and elect to participate or not at the next meeting.
For all parties present, this case is on the agenda for August 5th. It is not a public hearing. The public hearing is closed, so the board will not accept new testimony either in a written format or verbally, not even from the council member unless the board opens the public hearing again. At that August 5th meeting, there are two members absent. Ms. Carpenter, although came in late, by the rule, she's absent from this case. She can watch the tape. I'm so old. My kids are right. She can go on and watch the video that occurred. This is recorded and become eligible. Ms. Davis, who was not present, can also do such. Both those parties can also choose not to participate. And if that occurs, this case will be deemed denied by operational law because we will not have 2 meetings within 30 days.
Okay.
So for those parties, you are welcome to come hang out with us. Just to understand, it is not a public hearing next time. So with that, Mr. Chairman, this case is over.
All right, so this case is done. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break and come back and hear case 79. If you are visiting and not here for a case remaining on our docket, please take that outside. And if you are here for the remaining docket, we will get started. And I think the next case is case 79.
The next case is case 2021-079, located at 6119 New York Avenue. Here's an overview of the zoning map showing the R6 zoning on the property. Here's an aerial view showing the surrounding areas. Here's a site plan showing the proposed development. They're seeking a variance from the sidewalk requirements, and they're requesting to not build or pay in lieu of constructing the sidewalks. Here's the existing conditions of the property and the surrounding area. Is there anyone here in opposition to this case, to case 2021-079? Seeing none, the applicant may state your name, address, and present your case.
My name is Jimmy Green. Good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Green. I live at 615 Natchez Bend Road, Nashville, Tennessee, 37221.
All right, sir, tell us why you're here.
I am here to get denied on my ask so that I can join the lawsuit that's already in place about the sidewalk zoning that's there, that's unconstitutional, not only in our U.S., but also...
Well, do you need your full 5 minutes if you're here to be denied, or you just want us to vote?
Go ahead and vote.
Okay.
So you have no hardship argument to make?
Not...
Yeah, I mean, you have no hardship argument.
I know this is not a court of law, so no.
Okay.
I'm just...
You're welcome to your full 5 minutes. But since you started out with you're here to be denied, I'm trying to save you your 5 minutes and us. We just went through an hour and a half hearing.
And I was here for all of it. Yes, sir. Let's go ahead and vote.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right. There's
Obviously, for denial, we need a basis for thereof, so.
Hardship hasn't been stated or met.
Do we need to close the Chairman, do we need to close the public hearing? Do we have a public hearing on it?
Thank you. So you lost your 5 minutes, Ross. But no, just, I'm going there. No, I get it.
I'll be glad to state the basis.
No. So the public hearing will be, I'll close the public hearing. And we have a motion from Mr. Pepper to deny.
I'll second it, but it's based on lack of hardship.
Well, yeah, the lack of hardship, the allegation that the sidewalk law violates the Constitution is just not the basis for a variance.
So no evidence provided, and upon the recommendation of the Planning Department to disapprove. Motion seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, you're done. Thank you
very much.
Next case.
My microphone working now. Here's an overview of the parcel zoning. It is zoned RM20. An aerial view of the property.
Is the applicant here?
The applicant is
yes,
present.
Sir, if you can come up.
Applicant is seeking variances from both the 30-foot front setback, is seeking a 19.7-foot front setback, and also a 10-foot building separation requirement. He is seeking a 6-foot requirement between the buildings. Here's the existing site and the surrounding area. Is there anyone here in opposition to this case? Seeing none, the applicant may state your name, address, and present your case.
Hello, my name is Keith Jordan. My address is 2631 Smith Springs Road. I am requesting a 6-foot minimum setback between the two structures and a 40-foot setback from the road because I do not have any rear alley access. So I will have, I have parking in the front. My hardship is I only have a 50-foot lot, so if I put 10 feet in between, I couldn't get the desirable homes that I'm looking to put there.
So tell me about the front setback. You're asking for?
I'm asking for 40 feet because with codes, I can't park in my setback. So since I don't have rear alley access, I need to be able to park in the front.
So Lisa, what, is this a build to or what?
Because there are no other subject properties with this type of development. There is no contextual, so we defer to the table, which is actually 30 feet, not the initial 40-foot that we thought. That's a minimum setback. If you would like to go further, you can by right. It's not a required build to.
Okay.
So if you're seeking 40, you do not need to seek a variance for that. You can do that by right.
Okay.
So you don't need a front setback. If you want to build 40 feet from the road, you don't need a front setback. Is that?
Are you seeking a 40-foot setback for the buildings at this point?
Yes.
Then you do not need a variance for that. You're only asking for a separation reduction.
So you want to, and I guess the only question on the separation, it's not uncommon in Nashville to have 6 feet between homes in areas where that can happen. And this is an area where it can't happen or you wouldn't be here, right? And so I guess the question to me is always, so I mean, I understand that it's possible and it's not unusual, but why do you want 2 separate homes instead of just connecting the homes?
Honestly, I'm a general contractor.
Yeah.
So it's always more desirable if the house is detached.
Yeah.
It actually costs me a little more money when they're detached, but the person who buys the home feels like it's my individual home. I'm not staying in a condo.
Right. So even though it's really technically a duplex, doesn't feel like what your traditional duplex is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, okay.
Is there any side setback issues with this? Is that part of this variance at all, or is just the
No,
distance
just
between the
the
homes?
distance between.
Okay.
Well, did you all have anything where you?
Well, I was just, Lisa and I were talking, I want to get some clarity from the applicant while I've got you on the record. This site plan that's up here on the screen, is this what you're proposing to build? Because you've had a survey done, so you've had, let me back up a little bit. 21st Avenue, the actual pavement and right-of-way is out at the top of the page as is shown on the drawing. The actual property line where the right-of-way ends is there where Ms. Minton's putting her cursor. I mean, there's a lot of space between pavement and actual where your property starts. I just want to make sure if this is the plan you're proposing to build, then we definitely need a front setback variance from the standpoint of requesting 19.7, or excuse me, 20.
So he'll be 40
feet.
feet from the street, but maybe 20 feet from the property line. Is that?
Yes, that's what I want to clarify with you. When you talk 40 feet, do you mean from the pavement, or do you mean from the property line as your surveyor shown on his drawing here?
From the, I think from the actual property line. I just kind of remember when I go and there's the codes, and I apologize if I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but you can't park in your setbacks. So I thought I was requesting where I could get the variance where actually I could push it back so I would be parking in my setback.
And the reason I bring that question to you, if we slide, based on your drawing here, you're at 25 feet to the front porch. If you were to slide that back to 40, you're in violation of your rear setback. So in the standpoint of your request here, when we park in the front setback, we require a minimum 30-foot setback, 30-foot street setback, and your looks like 25 and some change. What I want to avoid is they approve you for, let's say they approve you for anything, you come in for a permit, I don't want there to be a conflict between this drawing and what the code says. Because if you're wanting to build what's shown here, then we definitely need a variance out front. I just don't want you to have to repeat this process again a second time because under a 40-foot setback testimony, we would draw that variance and you're free to do it. But your drawing does not reflect 40 feet here. You're 15 feet short of that. So that's kind of our quest from staff is, do you intend to build what's on the screen here? If that's so, then we definitely need to process a variance here today.
And that's on the docket, so we can do that. Okay. Well, let's assume that we will that the drawing is submitted as correct, and then we can decide. And it sounds to me that you had said you were 40 feet from the street already, which is clear from this drawing that you are, even though some of that's not your property, but that I think is what you would say is your hardship is that there's such a huge public right-of-way in front of you that you effectively meet the setback. And that you are, it looks like 20, it does look like 25 feet from the property line. Okay.
Remember, the separation, the only reason it's a 10-foot requirement here is because he's zoned RM multifamily. If he were RRS, this would be fine. So we've had to add that as an adjustment. It's just because of the underlying zoning.
Okay. So he's actually building, I mean, it is multifamily, but he's really building it as if it were a duplex lot. Okay. All right. Sir, did you have anything else to add at this point?
No, sir.
Any other questions? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Part of me thinks it's fitting too much on one lot, and I wish Ashante was here to give her little phrase. But then again, there's other structures in Nashville that are built with a 6-foot separation and have these equivalent street setbacks. So would like to hear what others have to say.
Well, I mean, it is RM, so it's meant to be multifamily. And, you know, to me, the separation issue, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it either. But I mean, I think that to me, if the 10, as Joey said, the 10-foot is if you had, you know, 2 quadruplexes, you'd want them 10 feet apart, you know. But to me, if it's single family and it behaves like the other single family and has the same, you know, fire conditions that one would have with a 6-foot separation rather than a 10-foot, then I don't really have an issue with it. The front setback to me is a pretty common request with such a large public right-of-way in front of the property line. So I don't know. My initial thought was, well, why don't you just attach them? But again, the way it's zoned and what he's trying to do, it's a personal choice, and I don't know that it has any real impact.
It's in sorry, someone else. I was going to say it was in the UZO, so he could have come to us with a special exception setback request, and it could have been filed that way too. So.
Yeah.
It also appears that, I mean, on this block, there's not another structure on there, but the next block down, it looks like that 25 feet would be approximately in line. I don't know if it shows it on these. I'm looking on Parcel Viewer, but with the next block down and kind of the prevailing development pattern going down that way. So with there not being any contextualized anything there, you know, it seems about in line with the around it.
So this is one that I really appreciate having architects on the board for. What is the hardship, the issue with the alley? Is that?
I do see that. I mean, most well, this is a hodgepodge of zoning around this area, looks like, but looks like most of the lots that are RM20 zoned do back up onto an alleyway, and this one does not, and it's pretty unique in that respect because it faces onto the kind of cross street rather than the east-west streets in that neighborhood. So I do see that kind of being an irregular shape to the lot, irregular usage.
Any other thoughts or emotion?
Are you going to make the motion?
Fine, I guess I will.
Make Christina do it?
I'll do it. I'll make a motion to approve the variances as the 25-foot front setback, and then the variance between the houses based on the irregular lot shape and the surrounding context.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye, raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next case.
You know, it's been so much more pleasant since we didn't have those rental cases.
I think we're on case 101, right? Is it?
Next case, 2021-101, located at 700 Hamilton Avenue, is seeking a variance from the number of stories allowed within the MUGA zoning district to construct a mixed-use development. Is there anyone here in opposition to this case? Seeing none, I'll present this case slides, and then the appellant may state their case. Here's an overview of the zoning for the area, MUGA, and the surrounding areas. Here's an aerial view of the existing conditions. Here's the site plan provided by the applicant, and they are seeking the variance from the maximum 5 stories within 75 feet at the build-to zone and the overall maximum of 7 stories within 105 foot after that 15-foot step back. They are seeking 7 stories, including a second garage level to be considered as a portion of the basement. Elevations that were shown, were in your packets also. The other elevations, the existing front view, and other site conditions, and the surrounding area. The applicant would go ahead and state your name, address, and present your case at this point.
Yeah, just push, there's a button there, just make sure the red light turns, there you go.
All right. My name is Julie DeBoe Davis. I'm with EOA Architects. Address, is it the address for the project or?
Your firm.
515 Main Street in Nashville. Just a little background on the site. So Hamilton Avenue is the front of the building. And then on the east side, we have the CSX tracks. On the west side, we have an adjacent property. And then on the north side, we have, Fort Negley Court. I guess our hardship is that we have a 20-foot drop in the site from the front of the building, so from Hamilton down to Fort Negley Court. We are 7 stories from grade. We have 2 lower levels of garage. The first level is considered a basement by the zoning definition. The second level of garage does not qualify for that basement definition. That's due to that 20-foot drop, even though from Hamilton, we are 7 stories. So we do not exceed the max height. We are just asking that that second level be considered a basement.
And that's based on the severe slope of the lot?
Correct.
Is it the severe slope of the lot or the severe slope of the lot and use since it's a garage level?
Could be both. It could be both, yeah. So.
And so what you said behind, right next to you is on the side is the train track. What's on the other side? Are you going to span all the way to Fort Negley Boulevard, or are you just going to back? What is to the left side of you?
To the left side is a adjacent property, which is, what property is that?
Sorry, this is Sheila Dial-Barton with EOA. That's Enterprise Electric's building. It's their office space and distribution center. And we have, really there's no side setbacks on the property, but we are setting off from that building. You can kind of see Fort Negley is on the north, which is sort of planned north on that property. Fort Negley is really, it's not a through street, it's more of an access street. So it is access to the back of the Enterprise Electric site, as well as it will be a secondary entrance to, I guess it's an entrance to the lower level of the garage. The upper level of the garage is accessed from Hamilton. So the garage has 2 plates, one entered on the upper and one entered on the lower. And as Julie mentioned, the site does drop, and you can see that from the aerial, it drops significantly off of Hamilton. So it's dropping 20 feet, which is perfect to actually sort of nestle a two-story garage into that level and still have 7 floors of residential occupied space above Hamilton, which is the maximum.
And it is a precast structure.
Cast in place.
Cast in place structure.
I think the other thing, as Julie mentioned, to note was that if you go to the site section, we're right at, I believe it's 79 feet, even though we're 7 floors. And the maximum height is 105. So we're well within the maximum height allowed for the property. So technically, we could make really high floor to floor to get up to that 105, and the structure would be much higher than it's actually designed as.
Yeah. Members of the applicant came to meet with me, and I looked at the definition of story, and I'm sort of handcuffed with it. They're clearly under the 105, but I had to call floor 2 of the garage a story for purposes of the code says you're restricted to 7. But we do that based off the average elevation on grade plane, which you see they're showing on their drawing as that red line kind of bisecting the first floor.
Joey's been wonderful. He's worked with us a few times on this project, going back and forth on the definitions, and really what we came to was the hardship. And the hardship is that we have a 20-foot elevation change in the property.
So if you weren't a code or code person or an architect, if you were on Hamilton, you'd look at that building and say it's 7 stories. If you were on Fort Negley Court, you'd look at that building and say it's 9 stories.
Correct. Well, it'd be a 7-story building with a 2-story garage.
That's right. I know that's okay. I'm just saying. Because well, like I said, but like I said, if you're not an architect or a code person, visually you will see it.
Yeah. I think
I'm not going to ask you what a camp is because you've already heard all that. but
we've been through that.
And again, it's what is again we come down to what's a story, what's not a story. You have a significant grade drop, and often you're not in a situation in height where you would need a step back or anything like that, which is that was a question I had when I saw it. I was like, well, if you're really going up higher, but according to the rules, you're not going up higher.
We actually will, just to clarify, have a step back after 5 floors. We have a 15-foot step back, which we are comply with and will comply with. So that is not, we're not coming to you for a variance for that.
Okay. But that's not something that, I don't see that on here, but that's.
I think it shows it on.
If you go to the next, yes, right there. Yeah. So on the bottom elevation, where the cursor is. See the 15-foot step back?
No, but a step back from Hamilton, but not from the back or the side.
Correct.
All right,
Yes.
No, and I get that on Hamilton, but where it's really tall is on the back or on the side. So that's where I'm at. I don't see that. So again,
I think what sort of helps the case is that Fort Negley Court is not a through street. It's really a service drive, and so it's really going to Enterprise's property as well as this property. And we, working with Joey, what we found was that it does say that. The topographic condition can be a hardship, which is why we're here with you today.
And I think one of the pictures kind of showed it, but is most of that existing slope, is that more at the front of the lot? It looks like, okay, there you go. I think that shows it pretty well.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and I think that site section is pretty representative of what the slope does as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're going to need to, obviously, to get the garage in there, come in with a large retaining wall to get the garage.
All right, any other questions at this point? Anything else to add? All right, we will close the public hearing. Did you all have it? I'm sorry, anybody else?
We can add it if you'd like. So one thing to note is that this could actually be done with zoning approval if we build retaining walls on each side, which actually brings up our grade plane. So it technically could be done with large retaining walls on each side. We kind of think that this project aesthetically works much better without retaining walls running on the east and the west side. But we could raise the grade plane so that that upper level of the garage is considered a basement. There's cost to that. There's aesthetic sort of diminishment by doing that, but it could be done.
Impact on neighbors and that type of thing.
We think it would be more intrusive on the neighbors.
Okay.
That's why the aesthetic of the impact on the neighbors would be detrimental to the project, I think, to their land value.
All right. Anything else? Then we will close the public hearing. Thoughts?
Well, I think an architect needs to make.
Push your button.
I think what the architects need to make this motion. And I'm looking
No
at.
pressure at all. Got you.
All right, your light's on, Mr. Cole. Did you have
No.
any thoughts?
I don't know why I always take these. I don't know that I'm on a roll. At first, I thought it was too much. It was putting too much on the site, but I think the explanation with the injury to the neighbors if the retaining walls were built is, and there is the hardship of the topography. So, and we certainly don't want the neighbors to be injured, not physically injured, but I don't know how to say that better. So I will try to make a motion to approve the variance request based on those factors.
I'll second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're down to the last case.
We hope you're smooth sailing from here out.
106.
Next case, case 2021-106, located at 8262 Charlotte Pike, seeking a variance from the contextual front setback requirements within the R40 district to construct a single-family residence. Here's an overview of the property and surrounding parcels. Aerial view. Proposed site, showing the proposed footprint at a 45-foot front setback versus the 120-foot per the contextual, which is triple the table. Existing conditions from the street and the surrounding area. Is anyone here in opposition to this case? Seeing none, go ahead and state your name, address, and present your case.
Hi, my name is Donald Elias. I'm the property owner. I live at 613 27th Avenue North, unit number 4. I'm here today to see if I could do the 45-foot setback instead of the 120. As you can see on the topo there, the elevations start to grow at a very, very high rate. And I believe the 45-foot per the zoning is much more realistic and much better for the actual lot itself.
And then is this for your home, or are you building this? Is this a project?
Yes, sir. This is my personal home.
Okay.
So if you built in this location, would there be less destruction of the trees? Would more
Yes.
trees remain?
Yes, there'd be much less. As you can see, that property line is actually right at the back. I think it's 110 is what that's cleared to. So if I was to go to 120, right, then you see that's actually an additional 40 back from that 120, so you'd be at 160 clear, plus, right, whatever clearance would need for the back of the property so that no trees would be on the home.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions at this point?
I guess this shows it pretty well here, but you said there's pretty unique topography on the backside of the lot that's very steep and would provide a hardship right there.
Yes, for sure. That driveway on the right, based on my last surveyor, was at the turn, which you can actually see in that top corner, it starts to grow at about 26 to 30%. So very steep.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add?
That's it.
So if you were to build farther back, you're basically going to have to eliminate the trees, which is a big thing for at least one or two people on this group. But you're also going to have to, you're going to change the runoff from the water, right?
Yes, it'd be a much more drastic scenario.
A question in regards to the setback. I see 45 feet being requested. Further back in the packet, I see 40-foot setback.
Yes, sir. So zoning for the R40 residential requires a 40-foot setback. I'm asking for 45,
okay.
So 5 additional feet to basically be off of that line.
The zoning code would triple that to the 120 versus the contextual. The contextual average, since the houses are much further back, we go to the lesser of those two, which would be the 120 feet. So the table does say 40 foot, but when there's a contextual, you take the contextual average versus triple the table. So that's where the 120 foot requirement comes from.
Have you talked to any of your, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Have you talked to any of your neighbors or folks that live around there?
Yes, I'm actually very close friends with the neighbor two to the right, the neighbor directly across the street, and the neighbor the third to the right, and then also my third to the left. All very good guys. They're much like they were going to be here today, to be honest, and they'll be here in the future if there's another appeal. But they're all for it because their properties are on the back. And I believe Jody Duncan is one of the names. Yeah, he said he emailed me. I'm not sure if he did or not. But,
Okay, so you heard absolutely nobody was objecting?
no.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything else to add? We will close the public hearing. This is one, again, all I saw was this. I didn't see the pictures as much, and we've had a couple of 40-foot setback requests in lots like this where the neighbors didn't like it, and so that's really why I didn't put it on consent. I thought the hardship was there, but I really wanted to see how folks responded, and with no response in the testimony, I don't have an issue.
Was that a motion?
Well, I'll move that we approve the variance because of the extreme slope of the lot. Have a motion, have a second. Any other discussion?
I just want to add something about the trees, that the trees are an important consideration.
The extreme slope of the lot and the fact that the part of the lot where he intends to build has been cleared, and to push the house further back would cause destruction of trees and impact runoff. It would be part of the motion. That is seconded. And any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, we're done.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.